Welcome, viewers and listeners, to our podcast show called Strictly Out of the Box. Remember, wake up, smell the coffee, and know exactly what time it is. It's 1 minute to midnight. We have a special guest, Candice Powers, who's from Boulder, Colorado, and we will talk to her about her experiences and what she knows and what she wants to share with you. Hi, Candice.
Hi, Robert.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'd like to know about I think our listeners would want to know about your background in ufology.
Uh-huh.
Can you please tell us?
Sure. I was really introduced to the people and the terms having to do with UFOs in 1987, which was the same year of the harmonic convergence. And I had an anomalous experience in that year on Mount Evans in Colorado with a friend. And not too long after that, I met a man in Texas who was involved with UFOs and with Mufon. So I told him about my experiences. He introduced me to those people, and I ended up getting, close with some of the people in the field. And I started to go into a kind of a really deep rabbit hole in 1988. I had all kinds of experiences in that year. And I don't know if it was because I met some people in MUFON, I got introduced to the whole topic. I mean, I'd had experiences as a child that I didn't really relate to ufology, but as soon as I met these people, boy, I started, things just really opened, and I started to have all kinds of experiences. And I ended up getting regressed by Bud Hopkins. And then that led me to working with Carla Turner. I don't know if you know who Carla Turner is. She wrote a book called Into the Fringe. She was a psychologist professor and at University of Texas. And so then she was working also with a woman named Barbara Bartholick, and Barbara Bartholick worked with Jacques Vallée for many, many years, and then she was doing regressions at that time. So all these contacts I was making sort of put me on the research path, simply because I was also having experiences and wanting to understand more about the phenomena. So in about 1989, I started going to the Ozark Mountain UFO conferences. And I met more people there and started sharing experiences. And then I moved to Colorado again back in 1993, and I got engaged in some shamanic studies. So I was doing that for several years, which kind of took me away from the whole ufology thing. But I started having mixed phenomena experiences along that time, and I basically took a break from ufology around 2003 because I went back to school, and I didn't get back into connecting with people in the UFO field until about 2009. And that year, I started Boulder Exo in Colorado with two other women, and we started hosting presentations in 2010. Our first speaker was Robert Salas, who has had a lot of experiences. Well, his big experience that made him famous was when he was involved with the missiles shutting down where was that?
Was it in Montana or was it in?
Yes, yeah, in Montana, right? Yeah, and so for 9 years, the last 9 years, I've been involved with Boulder Exo and continuing to do my research, and it's time to move on to other things. I've spent a lot of time and energy in Boulder Exo, and it's sort of taken me away from my own interests, more of my own interests that sort of been neglecting. So yeah, doing some writing and also working with experiencers and doing some spiritual counseling with numerology and other means that I have, things that I've learned along the way, and also with my education in psychology. So that's what I'm up to now, and how I got here.
Can you explain what harmonic is? I really didn't understand that part.
Oh, the harmonic convergence?
Yes.
Yeah, Jose Arguelles was the guy that actually named it that, I think, and he wrote the book The Mayan Factor, and it had to do with the Mayan calendar and with entering a new phase of existence in which we had more awareness and moving more toward higher consciousness.
It sounds like to me like the vibration, or people call the vibration, or the energy, or it's all the same thing. I think it's tapping into it like a conduit, and that's where we're going. We're headed for the stars. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cyclical thing based on the Mayan calendar. I mean, the cycles is what described to him that this particular year, this particular time is when we were moving into this new phase of understanding, a new phase of awareness.
Ascension, right?
Yeah.
Ascension. Yeah. It's all happening because it has to happen. And it is written in the stars, and it's going to happen whether I'm here or you're here or whether we're not here. It will happen. And nobody can stop it. That's the good thing. I'd like to ask you about the conscience aspects that you were talking about earlier to me about. Can you tell me that?
About the consciousness aspects,
Yes.
you called it? Yeah, so just to go back to, you know, how things have evolved around ufology. You know, in the 90s, back there, the topic was a lot more mysterious because we didn't know as much as we do now about it. And, you know, we didn't have the internet. It was all basically word of mouth. And there was also a lot of fear because of all the talk about abductions and things like that. And the things that were coming out at that time were scarier to people than they are now, that people have gotten kind of numb to some of these terms. Like reptilians is sort of a, you know, everyday word. People don't get too excited about that anymore, but back then, pretty scary stuff. And there was also some suspicion, you know, about what was causing this, how it was happening. But it wasn't exploited so much. There wasn't fame seeking and competition for attention and or money like there is today. You know, I mean, it's just all sort of gotten out of control. You know, and so you know, there was more of a sense of community back then, and yet it was still kind of like everybody was on the same page around trying to get to the truth, trying to figure out what was actually happening and why. And so everybody sort of was more supportive because they were bonded by the fact that they were all seeking some answers. But once we started getting some answers, you know, then people started to exploit that in order to, you know, make money and gain some position, and the lines got blurred. You know, it used to be that the lines were pretty fairly drawn, and you know, people knew what was what. Like I said, there was some suspicion of the government, for instance, but the government was over there, and the experiencers and the UFO people were over here. Now they're all sort of like, you know, you can't tell who's who. It's all these.
I like to say what my take on the whole thing is elements within the government, like DARPA, and maybe even secreter elements within the government. Uh, they put all these characters out there to put out this information only to keep the truth clouded. So to find the truth is like looking for a needle in a haystack, kind of.
Yes.
And a lot of the stuff is like, today, I feel it's like a P.T. Barnum circus.
Yeah.
And well, who has the truth, you know? But the real person stand up, please stand up. And but I think in people's consciousness and in their heart, they will know who's telling the truth and who's not, and how. And because fear and all that is easy to sell, I think it sells much more than people coming out with the truth, and that's why the news is what it is today, putting out bad news instead of good news. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's also because we've kind of reached a saturation point. I think people still don't really know what it is. So once we were introduced to it on a broader scale, and the researchers all started coming out and getting really involved, there was something to try to find out about. But once we exhausted all of the uh, avenues through the finite resources that we had, at that point, then there was nothing left to do but try to get as much out of it as you possibly could. People who came forward as researchers with information that seemed credible, and then they didn't have anything after that, had to make stuff up. I mean, they had to, in order to maintain their level of fame or attention or something like that, you know, they would
Absolutely
embellish.
correct.
Yeah, they would embellish things, and that they would just make stuff up. And then they started getting involved with the government people as a way to try and get more information. So that's why I say it's all sort of, the lines have become blurred now with a lot of researches. Some people say some people have been bought, you know, they've been compromised. Other
Sure.
people have been used for disinformation and then discarded. You know, things like that are going on. And then there's the people who really believe that if they get involved with these people as much as they can, then somehow they're going to get answers. But they don't really know any more than, I mean, they know more than they are telling us they know for sure. But I don't know
Yes.
that they know enough to supply us with any real answers. So, you know, so now what seems to be happening is the scientists, quantum physics, quantum mechanics is starting to come forward with a lot more information based on the consciousness question. They call it the consciousness problem because nobody knows what it is. No scientist in the world can define definitively what consciousness is. So it's all still theory, but they're coming up with some really interesting ideas in these days. They're getting a lot more advanced in putting together anthropological work along with quantum physics and you know, just other avenues that they use to correlate, which is different really from causation. I mean, they're completely going by the whole idea of causation. They're saying that there's no causal structure to reality. I mean, it's getting down to that. And scientists like Donald Hoffman, who is a physicist, quantum physicist, is saying some very, very interesting things. And he's saying that consciousness is fundamental to material reality, that actually physical existence is an interface, that consciousness evolved for fitness, for the survival of the species, kind of like Darwinism, but it's actually not true reality. So he uses the example, the analogy of a computer screen, where you have icons on the computer screen that you use to get to information that's in the computer. But the icon itself it's just an interface. It's a representation of what you want to do, but it has nothing at all to do with what's going on in the computer, right? So he's saying that the desktop icons are like our reality. That our reality is just an interface that our perceptions through time have evolved in order to help us survive, because there's so much data out there. We would be totally overwhelmed if we tried to take it all in. So in order to not be overwhelmed, we have developed this interface that we call reality. And it's certainly something to take seriously, because we created it, and so therefore we're living by it. But it's not the truth. He says it's actually designed to hide the truth.
It's safety valves, so you wouldn't see so much that it would blow you away, and you'd probably end up in a mental psych ward.
Yeah.
Well, I have stated that when I show people the truth, that and what I teach, that they're like a tree. They only could get so much knowledge, and not quickly. Just like a tree, you get watered and not so much water. You just get enough to grow. And as you grow, you're able to handle much more knowledge, that you won't blow a fuse, or you won't end up in the psych ward. So you really grow. You're capable to see much more, and understand what's really out there and who they are. And it is a rabbit hole. So you get to go down the rabbit hole, and that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Where's it going today, Candice?
Yeah. Well,
where's ufology going?
Well, again, when we first started, there was a lot more nuts and bolts focus, right? We like, even back in 2009 when we started Boulder Exo, a lot of our presenters were speaking from a nuts and bolts perspective in terms of lights in the sky, phenomena that was happening, so that we were trying to prove the existence of the phenomena. And so at some point it became pretty clear that we needed to move beyond the idea of do they exist, and start to explore, why are they here? What is the purpose of their contact with us? And why is it happening? What do we do with this? What does it have to do with humanity?
Piecing the dots together, or putting the dots together, and looking at the bigger picture, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so early on, though, we had people like Stan Romanek, who had very compelling photographic evidence, as well as multiple witness events that happened many times over in his home, and whose experiences actually planted the notions of conscious contact with extraterrestrials, as well as a question about why they were here. So we were already starting, even then, to get a taste of a deeper level of interaction and understanding about the ET phenomena. There's still people even today who are very stuck in, oh, they don't even exist. Nothing like that exists. It's all in imagination. But by and large, the awareness has grown a lot, and we can see that through the media and through how they're taking it more seriously now. They're, paying a lot more attention. We've got the government now admitting that they have programs. In 2017, they came out with that statement from the Pentagon, saying that they had these videos of pilots seeing these the Tic Tac UFO phenomena that happened, and admitting that, yeah, these things are happening and we don't know what they are. And now they have this program on History Channel, I think it's called Unidentified. You know about that?
I think I know about it. Is that being produced by a guy named Crystal up in Monterey Bay somewhere?
I'm not sure about that, but what I can tell you is that, Tom DeLonge, who was the lead singer for Blink 182, approached government people saying that he thought they were all a threat and that something needed to be done. And as a concerned citizen, and all that, he approached it that way. And so sure enough, they formed this organization called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is really marketing TV programs and books and things like that. So they're the ones that are putting on this program on the History Channel. But it's interesting. What's interesting is that the organization is made up of military, ex-military, military people.
Well,
Yeah.
again, this selling fear. Fear is easy to sell.
Yes.
It's easier to sell than the truth. And they don't want the public to have the truth. Why? Because then we'll know basically all the things they've been doing behind our back and all the technology they have that could improve all our lives, that they're just using it for military purposes. That's my take on that.
Oh, yeah.
And I deal with extraterrestrials, so I know that they're not a threat to me. And I've met the reptilians a few times, and yet they look very scary, but they did not pose any threat to me. So I cannot speak bad about them. They're there. Right. They're really there, but fear is easy to sell. I just try to put out there for people to reach out, understand what's going on, and make and get to know them in order for you to go on your own journey, because we're all going to be called to save the earth someday. That's coming soon.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, thank you, Robert, because that's absolutely true. What you're saying is absolutely correct. I mean, this is the aim, actually, because Tom DeLonge gave them the idea of, oh, here's a rock star. We can use him, right, to put out this idea that it's a threat. And then if we got military people backing him up, right, then we can perpetuate this whole fear paradigm, so that when if they decide to have a fake alien invasion, which this was said by Werner von Braun, Carol Rosin, who was kind of like his Girl Friday, told us many years ago that he had said that there would be a fake alien invasion.
Right, and it all comes down to the budget.
Yeah.
If people are afraid, they won't question expenditures on what they're doing to battle this alien, whatever they say, threat. It's not a threat. It's not the first time that the military has used music to the intelligence service to use music. They had done that back in the 60s with back in Laurel Canyon, I believe. They had an Army intelligence base there that most of the rock stars were tied to that intelligence.
Yeah.
And why they did it was to control the masses again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if it comes down to because Stephen Greer talks a lot, and we don't know how much of this is really not, but he talks a lot about how they have actually created fake aliens already. They controllable robots that have some biological functioning as well, and that these would be used and have been used for fake abductions and things like that, so that they are putting things in place for a fake invasion. And if the fake invasion happened, then of course the military is going to come in and save us, and then we'll turn to the military and the government instead of to when I say military, I'm not talking about the normal military. Our normal military knows nothing about this. This is all part of special access programs and
right.
Black Ops and things like that.
Black Ops. There's a whole army.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah. So
whole
that's
big arm.
all a
Of
whole
course.
different ball of wax.
Right. I worked at the VA hospital, and I used to go to the psych ward to take meds, and there would be a number of soldiers that were there, possibly who seen too much in this program you're talking about, by going into dimensional travel and
Mhm.
having battles and interdimensional battles, and seeing things that they weren't. Either they were pushed too fast to absorb this kind of thing, and they blew a fuse, but something happened. And I seen these absolutely intelligent, incredible people in the psych ward. And it
Mhm.
was like a jail. They had two big slam doors that they couldn't get out. And
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that's good good witnessing, Robert, for what the show Project Blue Book, you know, the new series about J. Allen Hynek that's out now. Um, they've shown a couple of things like that on the show, and of course it's all fictionalized, but it's based on some true accounts. And we had actually Paul Hynek, who is uh, Jay Allen's son, speak for Boulder Exo, and he told us that yeah, some of them are fictionalized, some of them are not so fictionalized, but they're all based on the true stories, the true accounts that happened to his dad in the course of Project Blue Book in those investigations. So so yeah, they don't you know, they don't let those kinds of stories. They didn't before. They're fictionalizing it now so that we can, you know, have access to it on some level, but they're also controlling the narrative to make sure that, you know, we're not going to go where they don't want us to go too much. And also, if they can perpetuate the fear, then those people who are claiming ETs are friendly, you know, will kind of be pushed aside in favor of you know, other areas taking over that are supporting the idea that they're a threat. So you know, it's a very important time that we're in terms of um, trying to sort all of this out and get
correct.
our own ability to perceive, you know, more clear, our discernment ability. We need to hone our discernment skills, I think, to take everything in, and then also to be able to feel it on a gut level, and also do our own research to make sure that we can get a clearer perception of what it is that's actually happening, and not fall for some of these things that might come down the pike. I'm not saying that it's absolutely going to happen. In fact, I'm sure that there are a lot of things in place trying to prevent that as well. So,
Well, I'd like to share a story that coincides with them creating aliens and stuff.
yes.
I was privileged to have been taken to a place. The story is rather long, so I'll just talk about the part what I saw in part of that story. I was taken to a big like hangar, but it was a clean room, and
Mm.
everybody was wearing. There was a German scientist that looked very eccentric, and he had a clipboard, and he had this wild hair, almost like Back to the Future, that scientist. And he was so concerned about what I thought was going on and what I thought about it. What was going on is they had a like a cleaners. You know how they have in the cleaners, they have this chain that carries all the clothes around.
Yeah.
Well, they had this thing which much bigger, and it was it underneath it. It had the same kind of alien with a football-sized cranium, but the top was not there. But you could see the brain, and it wasn't touching anything, so it was levitated by some type of magnetic force. And
Hmm.
it was like an assembly line, and it had a whole bunch of them just going around this big clean room. And there was a three stairs, like a little platform for me to climb up three stairs. It was in front of me. And then there was one empty space in that whole line, and it stopped right in front of me. And after I expressed to the professor that I thought it was great what I was looking at. He was so he was so excited to hear that from me. He was so excited. It was like a kid in a candy store who you finally gave him your approval, and he was so excited, like he hit a home run or something.
So you weren't afraid of
No,
being
no,
added to this rack of, yeah,
no,
okay.
no, no. I wasn't afraid because I've been groomed over the years with all the things that I've been through, and so I'm able to to go through something like that without anything bad happening. So what happened is it stopped. That empty space stopped in front of the 3 stairs, and he said, "Would you like to go up?" And I said, "Sure." So I went up. I went under this thing, and the clearance for the other ones were about 4 or 5 inches, right? So I was about this far from it. So it didn't levitate me. And as I was saying, it's not working, I said, it's not. And then it levitated me. And as it levitated me, I was underneath it, it levitated me. It put me into a virtual reality.
Huh.
So in my virtual reality, did I forget to say that the scientist was German? And as it levitated me into this virtual reality, I was going into World War II battles with the Germans. I was an American soldier, and I went into a couple battles. One battle that I was going through in this virtual reality, we were getting the best of them. We were killing a lot of Germans on the ridge. And then it zoomed into another mission where I was in charge of about 12 guys, and we're hitting a research facility, like a secret mission.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a clearing of about 100 yards where we had to get through that 100 yards to get beyond the barbed wire fence to get to the building. Well, as we were halfway in this clearing, these floodlights came on, and it was like daylight. And the young guy looked at me and said, "Sarge, what do we do?" And I told him, I just had to tell him, don't get caught. You don't get caught alive. And then I zoomed back, and that's what happened to me. I got to experience that. So the Germans are creating these hybrids, and for whatever reason, I really don't know.
So when did that happen, Robert?
That happened about 5 years ago. And I've only told people privately. I've never put that on my, when I talk or anything else. Just my personal friends. Some people I'd be privileged to hear it from me. But that did happen.
That's quite a story.
It's a true story.
Do you have conscious memory of being taken to the place, or did you have a regression later that you came to that?
No, it was sort of like they took my consciousness as I was sleeping in my room. They took my consciousness somewhere else.
Right.
And somewhat like what Donald Marshall talks about cloning centers, something like that. He says they take your consciousness. Well, they were capable of taking my consciousness out of and it was very like reality. It was all reality, and I got to see it, and I still remember it as if it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I have plenty of stories. I haven't let them out yet, but
thank you for sharing
I thought
that.
I shared that.
Yeah, that is an interesting story. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of consciousness really is, I think the whole purpose of our contact with the greater reality. I really feel that we're in a time, since we've crossed the millennial threshold, that this particular time, on the one hand, if we're looking at no space-time, there is no space-time, it's all consciousness, yes, but evolution through our perceptions has created this space-time interface for us so that we can take all of this in. And I think that having these kinds of experiences where we can talk about, they took my consciousness. We can say things like that now. They
Exactly.
took my consciousness and did something with it. You know, in times past, you would have thought somebody was totally crazy to say something like that.
Exactly.
You know, so the thing is, we're being more saturated with these kinds of phenomena and experiences to wake us up to the idea that we not only are we on the brink of understanding what consciousness is, although that might not ever happen. At least we're coming to a place where we can grasp the idea that we are consciousness, that we're co-creators in this field of reality. I mean, there's a lot of spiritual, religious, shamanistic people who talk about this and have talked about this for a long time, that we create our own reality. And so if the scientists are now even saying that that reality is just an interface between ourselves and what is really the truth, that this interface is actually designed to hide the truth so that it protects us from overwhelm. I mean, that's a huge statement, to say that there actually is nothing but consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental to material existence. Then if we are consciousness, then we're certainly co-creators in this process. I mean, it's such a complex, and if you get into looking at any of these videos done by Donald Hoffman, in which he talks about this in more detail. I'm not a physicist, I can't really speak to it on that level, but just to say that it's a very complex system that we're in, involving different species and what is collective reality. Why do we all agree that this is a table, for instance?
Exactly.
There's those kinds of questions. But I mean, science is now having a very credible and practical kind of answer to that, or at least a working theory. So if we're that far already, it feels to me like the next level that the ETs are helping us to get to is the understanding that we are consciousness, and that we are in fact creating our reality. And if that were widely accepted and understood, oh my gosh, can you imagine what what we could do with that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I personally do what I do, by going out there and sharing that we are able to do anything because we have it in us. Everything
Yeah.
that we have it like the Creator. We are sons and daughters. Therefore, we have the attributes of God, really.
Yes.
And what I go out there and do is I share this knowledge in order to soften the blow when people have to really realize that what I've been saying all this time is true. And this way they will be able to absorb it and not be freaked out. And they say, oh, yeah, okay, we're able.
Yes.
We've been prepared.
Yes, yeah, we're very lucky to have you, Robert. We're lucky to have the people who are trying to bridge these ideas to help people get prepared for higher consciousness. So that we do move into another level of existence,
Exactly.
and we can get beyond this duality. We can transcend duality. In a way that we could possibly still inhabit physical form and yet do it consciously, with the awareness of our consciousness interconnectedness.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we could get to that point, we could create a beautiful world. We could create
And,
anything we wanted to, but
and we are.
yeah, and we are, and by understanding, yeah, we're already doing it, but we're doing it unconsciously. So if we had some consciousness, some awareness of this, and some understanding that we're all interrelated, it would be like shooting yourself, right? I mean, you wouldn't want to shoot somebody because it would be the same thing as shooting yourself.
Exactly.
So that would stop that, you know. And I think that there are people who are opposed to this idea because they like the seduction of form. They like um, uh, the individuality of inhabiting form so that they can feel more powerful, not
Well,
understanding how much more powerful they would
well,
actually be if they
well,
were part of the larger consciousness. Yeah.
my personal belief on that is that the powers that be, the Illuminati and the cabal, or whatever you choose to call it, that they've held this knowledge for a long time. They just didn't want the average person, the public, to possess this kind of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because they really don't want us rocking their boat. The world they created and the money that's being made, the banking system, all that sort of thing. They don't want you to change it up. They don't want us to change it up at all because they're happy with it the way it is.
Right.
But it's going to change regardless of that.
Yeah. And
It
doesn't
has
it
to
really
change.
say, yeah, and doesn't it really say too that they're not the powers that be? They envision themselves that way, but
Well, we let them have that.
yeah, no, if they really knew what it was, if they really understood it, and they were really evolved enough to come into that full realization, they wouldn't be acting the way they are. They wouldn't be doing the things that
Well, I think they're
they
getting the big picture now. I
yeah.
really do. I really think they're getting the picture.
Let's
And so
hope.
they're, well, I think they are. There's not as much chemtrails out there right now. Things are happening. I think I've been saying there's a war going on. You just don't know it. Besides the wars in the Middle East, there's a big war, and it's an interdimensional war, and it's happening. First of all, the Galactic Federation that's up there does not want these, I'll say it, clowns to blow up the world. And all it takes is one drastic mistake. So uh, they don't want that happening, and it's not going to happen. We are going to win. Uh, it's just that the powers, I won't say powers be, but the people that are benefiting most
Yes.
don't want no changes,
Yes.
but they're not going to be able to stop it. It's going to be a real peaceful, maybe not at the beginning, but it's going to be peaceful. The world's going to be at peace, and we are going to put it back to its pristine condition. It might take 1,000 years though, but
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't really matter what goes on now on one level in terms of dimensions, because there are parallel dimensions and there are infinite a number of parallel dimensions. So even if things go south here, those people who are not resonating at that level, Dolores Cannon talked a lot about this, then they will perhaps shift to another dimension so that they are experiencing a more resonant existence with their
correct.
frequency where they are. Yeah.
Right. I believe there's 10 to 12 dimensions, but some people talk about a lot more. But I picture the dimensions as a box. You have four sides. You got up and down. So you got four plus the down. You got four plus the up. So I believe there's 10 dimensions. Um, but that's my belief. I mean, I can't prove it, but I think that's pretty simple enough.
Yeah.
But I've experienced some type of dimensional travel before, so I've been privileged to experience a lot. So
Yeah. Are you writing about that?
getting to it, but I have to right now because there's people out there that I've taught and shared my knowledge with and my discoveries, and they want to write their own book as it stirs. But I don't believe they'll be able to use me as a platform. I am who I am. I brought this stuff out and I've taught the world what I know, and it's changing. I even see people putting out that they're the summoner. Okay, I shared it with the world. for that to exactly happen. But sometimes it hurts me a little bit, and that's pride, and I guess stuff like that. But ego.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what I'm trying to tell the world is it's a big world, man. It's not just about working and paying taxes and
Yeah.
drinking
Right.
Budweiser and smoking cigarettes and stuff. It's it's a
Yeah.
big world.
A lot more going on there. Yeah.
So if you're focused, you'll be able to see that rabbit hole and how deep it goes. But once I, like when at events, once I expose them to that, I can't take it back. So they're gonna, and I try to let them know that don't look at it if you don't want, because it's gonna alter your world and your perception of the world,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is a good thing. I rather know than not know.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah.
choose not to know. You know, it's a lot of people. It's ignorance is bliss to an extent. Are you
Well,
there?
at the same time, there's we have I don't know that we have a greater capacity at this particular time, um, but it's probably the same capacity we've always had. It's just accessing different uh, levels of it. You know, that we're at a time now. Again, looking at evolution in terms of space time. Where if we embrace some of these higher ideas and ideals even, they will start to manifest. Because if we are consciousness co-creating in the universe, then who we are in our own level of consciousness will manifest. You know, that
Right.
will start happening. So the more we change ourselves, the more we come into higher understanding through our own efforts, to open to it mostly. You know, then the more the world changes, because as we change, then that becomes the reality we're in.
Correct. You notice that little kids in strollers now are operating cell phones.
Oh
It's just
God. Yeah. Yeah, they're putting kids in front of computers. You know, I mean, I think all children should have courses in humanity before ever going near a computer. Uh,
right.
yeah, because
I
I mean,
believe that
the
also.
AI thing, you know, that's a whole nother subject. We could talk for an hour on
Yeah.
that.
But it's the acceleration of mankind. We are getting there, and we're going to get there. Can you tell us where where are you going from here with your studies and all that in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania?
yeah, yes. Since I am no longer with Boulder Exo, since I've sort of graduated from that, I am just still working. So I was talking about before with my numerology, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the process of building a new website, so it's not out there yet, for my spiritual counseling, and working with experiencers. You know, just to widen the field, just to get more people sort of more opportunity to share, you know, and start to explore these things. And just like the 100th monkey, you know, the more of us are talking about it and exploring it and working together with these things, the bigger that field becomes. And
Yes.
once we reach um, critical mass, you know, then the whole thing changes. Yeah. So that's basically it. Yeah, that's what I'm up to, and continuing my research, of course, on all kinds of levels.
Can you tell people where to go now to look at your website?
Yes, they can go to my old website. They can still go there to see the numerology. That's numerologybycandice.com. Candice spelled with an I, Candice, numerologybycandice.com.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'll have my other one up soon, and I'll give that to you. And if you want to put that out later, we
Of
can.
course, yes.
Great.
Let's touch on something else. Do you plan on opening or starting a new group like you did with?
With Boulder Exo?
Yes.
Yeah, not at this time. I'm not entertaining any ideas like that at this time. It's a lot of work, a lot of energy, and working with a lot of other energies too. I mean, I met some wonderful people in the course of the 9 years, and I'm still in contact with many of those people. And you know, that's a, a very big benefit to being in something like that. But at the same time, yeah, it's the direction that that's going. I would like to start something like this again once there's more clarity about a new direction. I'm in the process of writing a book, and we'll see if anything comes from that. I might get inspired through writing that to start off in a direction like that, but not that old direction, a new direction with it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot since then. So
Yes.
naturally, you're going to be going in a whole different direction, but or the
Yeah.
same direction. What I
Yeah.
would like to say, who was your best guest during your times at Exo?
Oh gosh, that would be hard to say. We had so many wonderful people. Danny Sheehan, loved Danny Sheehan. He's got an organization called the Romero Institute. Really worthwhile work that he's doing there, and he's
What
working
kind of
with.
work is he doing?
Well, he's a lawyer, you know, and he did the Silkwood case, and
Wow.
yeah, and he yeah, he's done a lot of different very high profile cases, but he also recently helped the Native Americans at Standing Rock over the water issues. He represented them and has had some success for the
Yay.
things that they're fighting for. Yeah, it's been really wonderful. So Danny Sheehan, loved him, and also Grant Cameron. Grant Cameron has been doing some amazing work. Really, he's just such a devoted, dedicated researcher, and has been for many, many years. He had his own experiences in 1975, and just got hooked from that moment, you know, into doing the research. But he's the presidential UFO guy, is what they referred to him as in the past, because he was the one that would go into the Freedom of Information Act um, uh, archives. You know, he would go in there and get all this information, documentation, and he's right now even working on the Stan Friedman, who just passed, Stanton Friedman. And he's going through the archives of all of his work and the things that he's done over the years, and it's just a monumental amount of information there. So yeah, so Grant Cameron is bringing out a lot of information, and he's written several books now. I highly recommend checking him out and what he's up to.
Oh, great. I had an opportunity to interact with Stanton Friedman, and but it's kind of like classified a little bit. But anyway, he's a great man. Too bad he has passed away. He was the godfather of ufology.
He was definitely very, very deeply involved, you know, like a lot of the researchers from the past. You know, he was one of the ones that was really devoted to finding the truth. Some people think he was compromised at some point, you know, that he went to work for the government instead of the people, but who knows?
I can tell you my take on it, since I've interacted with him. I believe he was a government employee and he was accountable. So, but inside his true heart, he was trying. You had to read between the lines with Stanton and Mr. Friedman. And so I read between the lines, and I understood that he didn't like where the government was going with this, but you know, he did have to answer appropriately, because they would go after him anyway if he didn't go by the protocol. But
yeah,
he
a lot
did.
of it for protection, to protect themselves, for sure.
Yeah, they do. And that was him. I understood that.
Yeah, oh, I did too. That way he could do more work. You know, he could actually get more done
Right.
if he didn't have to worry about being shut down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, well, do you want to put out any more things? Come on, think. Tell. Come on, Candice.
Oh gosh. You know, I just hope that that we can find some peace in this world. I hope that people can really find the courage to be open to new information and even things that seem strange or unusual. Um, you know, to develop first of all good discernment skills, but also to open their hearts so that they can learn to be more intuitive and to feel into what is being presented to them, and get back to some basic truth about what reality, the true reality is, which is really love. You know, I mean uh,
I think
that's
your
love.
message is a wonderful message to all of the people and listeners and to the world, actually. And I hope for the same thing, and it will happen. Um, that's about all the time we have right now, Candice. But I'm sure again you'll be on this show because a lot more will be happening and in your life, and as the UFO world changes, and you write your book, we'll be putting your book, if you don't mind, on this podcast. We'll let you talk about it.
Would love that, Robert. Thank you.
Okay, it's time to close. All you listeners and viewers out there, remember, uh, there's a lot out there. So be focused, look, and remember, it's in the Bible. Knock and the door will be open. Seek and you shall find, and ask and you shall receive. So remember those three things. They all apply together. And so we're going to get there. Thank you again, Candice, for being your lovely woman and lovely person. And
Thank you.
namaste.
Thank you very much, Robert. Namaste.